problem is now I can't see my nose, but that's okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing?
Great. Good.
Are you excited about the Constitution of the United States?
Yes.
I'm delighted to see you here today because I'm excited about the Constitution of the United States as well, and I look forward to any opportunity to talk to people about the Constitution. Sharon mentioned my story. I'll give you just a slight introduction to that. Bob and I served an LDS mission to Italy. We came home 10 years ago next week. Stepped into a study of the Constitution because of the changes we could see taking place in government. I fell in love with the Constitution and went on to expand on that topic, and I've spent the last 10 years literally bathing myself in this topic. Absolutely love the topic itself, and I love to be able to teach people about it. Because of that, I've created some materials that are being used across the country, and Bob and I have traveled the country from one side to the other. One summer we put in 25,000 miles traveling the country. And so it's a pleasure for me to be able to talk to you today about the Constitution because I am really excited about law. Now, that doesn't mean I'm intending to go to law school or anything like that. I'm not talking about that form of the law. I'm talking about law as it pertains to individuals such as you and I and how it helps to structure our world. Because you see, the purpose of law is to control power. We must control power. This is the human nature thing. You read that all the way through the scriptures. You read it all the way through the history of the world. Power and the money that goes with it, the money and the influence that go with it, have controlled the world. Now, there are really two kinds of law in the world, and I'm only going to be talking about one of those today. But those two kinds are one that I call hodgepodge. If you are a fan of Cleon Skousen, who is a wonderful man and a brilliant constitutional scholar, he calls that ruler's law. Put together by rulers, put together by men. Pieces stuck together, no really logical consequence to that law. That's not a good law to live by, and yet that's the law that most of the world lives by. But the law that I'm going to talk to you today is law that is based on ethical, principled decisions. Very few nations have had the opportunity to live under that kind of a law. We have. That is one of the absolutely beautiful things about the United States of America. We created our law from whole cloth. We came together as a group of people. We constructed that form of government, and it has been a beautiful source of government. Now, I'm going to have to use my notes a lot today and my glasses. I have developed some eye problems, and they are preventing me from being able to see as well as I would like to. So you get to look at me today with spectacles on, and you're going to just love that because I'm so gorgeous when I wear my glasses. So there are some, and they always go off and on because I can't talk with them on and I can't see with them off. So here you go, folks. Law has three major characteristics, and if you understand these three characteristics, you begin to see this concept between hodgepodge law and disciplined and effective law created by God. This disciplined and effective, this ethical law is always created by God. Folks, there are only two places that law can come from. It can come from God, or it can come from man. There's no third source here. If you have law that comes from man, it's going to be undisciplined, and it's going to change over time, and it is not going to protect you. But if you have laws based on the principles that God gave us, you are going to have law that is discoverable, meaning that you can always find it. You can, any group of people, anytime, any place, anywhere, can always find those principles because they are discoverable, they are true, they are absolute. That law is also going to be fixed. It's not going to change over time. And it's going to be unchanging in the sense that all people will know that they have those characteristics of the law. This is the difference between God's law and man's law. Man's law does not meet those three criteria. God's law does meet those three criteria. And so really what I'm going to be talking to you about today is God's law. Because this is what I've learned. In 10 years of immersing myself in the Constitution in every way, shape, and form that I have known how to do, I have learned an absolute truth. And that is what I want to share with you today. And that is that God cares a great deal about government. Because if government is appropriate and proper among a group of people, they have the right to learn God's spiritual laws as well as living under peace and righteousness in that law. So you see, it is so important for us to have a law that is based on God's principles. Now, we live under a mentality, a mantra in the United States today that says we have to separate the state and religion. Nothing could be further from the truth. We do not want religion or the state dictating either one of them to the other. We want to have the right to use both of those. But law and religion are inseparably connected because the principles upon which good, sound law is based will always be principles that also apply to religion and that come from religion. It's an important concept, and I hope that you will understand that today. So, let me tell you about some of the law that I've investigated as I've tried to understand this concept of the effect that religion and law have as they marry themselves together, never in the system of government, but marry themselves in the hearts of the people and in the culture itself. I've begun to investigate law from many different sources. I went first to the law of Moses. I don't know how much you know about law, but for many, many years in the world, we didn't have a system of organized law. The first, we had the law of Hammurabi, and we had such things as that, but the first real organized system of law that emerged in the world was given to Moses at the foot of Mount Sinai, and it was given to him by God. God created that law, and he dictated that law to Moses, and the children of Israel lived by that law. Now, I wish I had time to go into the principles of law. The law that ancient Israel lived by, very, very similar to our Constitution of the United States in the principles. The principles are the same. Application different, different people, different time, different era, all of those things, but the principles are the same. We can also step into the ancient Anglo-Saxons that invaded England in the year 450 AD, brought with them principles of representative law. I haven't found any source that tells where they got that law from, but it's a very interesting concept, isn't it, that they operated by that law. Those of you who are devotees of the Book of Mormon will know that there's a great deal about law in the Book of Mormon, and the law that they lived by in the United States of America, ancient Americans, lived by came from the brass plates, and the brass plates were the replication of the 5 books of Moses, which brought the same law that Moses had received at the foot of Mount Sinai. So we have people in ancient America living by those same principles. Now there's another really interesting application of this as you begin to study this whole concept of law, and that is we begin looking at the Native American Indians here in the United States of America. I'm not talking about anciently, I am talking anciently because I'm going to go back to the 1700s, I'm going to go back beyond that, I'm going to go to the 1400s, possibly even to the 1100s, when laws known as the Great Law of Peace emerged among the Iroquois Indians. We would say that Iroquois, but the French name is Iroquois. Iroquois Indians living in upstate New York lived a system of government very similar to our Constitution of the United States. They call it the Great Law of Peace. They said that that law was given to them by heavenly messengers. There are 2 sources from when the heavenly messengers brought, or messenger, I believe it is, brought that information. One set of information says 1100s, one says the 1400s. At any rate, they lived by that law for hundreds of years. And guess what? This is what is so fascinating about this. The principles of the Great Law of Peace are the same principles that foundation the Constitution of the United States. They are also the same principles used by the Nephites in ancient America, and they are the same principles used by the children of Israel that they received from Moses. So as I've studied this, all of these laws that I've just told you about all replicate the laws and the principles that we use in the Constitution of the United States. So this is what I have learned from this process. I learned that God has one basic set of civil laws, just as he has one basic set of spiritual laws. And those laws apply to all people at all times and in all places. They will be adapted to the individuals. But whenever any group of people is dedicated to living under the principles of righteousness and truth, these same principles are going to emerge in their law. I find that fascinating. I hope that you do as well. I would love to stand up here and talk to you more about the Native American Indians and the things that I've learned about the principles and the practices that they use. I'll just give you one little tidbit of this. I love this topic. I have to make myself depart from this topic and move on with something else. but I have read the Iroquois Great Law of Peace. I had a friend who knew I was interested in this topic, and she called me up one day and she said, I think you need to know that there's a book that would teach you more about the Great Law of Peace and how it coordinates with the Constitution. She told me the name of the book. I went online, I bought it. A little tiny book like this cost me $53, but it was a fascinating book. Down one side of each page, it has the Great Law of Peace, and down the other side of the page, right and left columns, it has the United States Constitution. Principles the same, studying them the same. That Great Law of Peace by the Iroquois mentions the Creator and his effect and his blessings 7 different times in that volume. So these people were living by a system of government very similar to our own. They influenced the founding fathers. They went to Congress. They shared their words with the founding fathers. In fact, James Madison at one point in time actually went and spent a week with the Native American Indians, living with them so he could better understand their principles. Have any of you ever heard that taught? Most people are not aware that that's even a part of our history, but it is a part of our history, and it's a fascinating thing.
What's the name of the little book that you found?
What's the name of the little book? I don't even know if you'll be able to find it. It is called, I believe, The U.S. Constitution and the Great Law of Peace. And you may find it. You may be able to find that online. So let's talk then about the United States Constitution, because the Constitution is really the Constitution is a two-part process because it's based and partnered with the Declaration of Independence. So you have the Declaration of Independence establishes the authority on which the Constitution was developed. It sets the rights, it lists the grievances, it tells why the people needed to break off and become an independent nation. And the Constitution itself doesn't work unless you center it on the Declaration of Independence. So what you really have is you have a foundation of Christian principles. And then resting on that, you have the Declaration of Independence. And then resting on that, you have the Constitution of the United States. So the Constitution then sets the specifics of that, how power is to be divided and how it's to be controlled. It codifies right and wrong. It's in written form that had to be ratified by the people so that there is complete acceptance of that law. But the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence cannot be separated from each other. So there's one other element of this that's very important, and that is that you have to have people foundation this whole process who are virtuous and righteous and who are dedicated to principles of integrity and truth. Are you aware that, I'm done with that page. Are you aware that our founding fathers overwhelmingly stated their dedication to Christian principles?
Yes.
I listen to those who are condemning the Constitution, and they say the founding fathers, they say it's a totally secular document. They say the founding fathers had no religious basis, and I go, are you kidding me? All you have to do is go into their writings and read them. And they're simply overwhelming the number of times that they stated that God was at the basis of what they were doing. Now, they didn't state it in the words that you and I would use, and they used, instead of using the word God, they used the word divine providence. But they state over and over again that God is involved in that. And I want to share with you some statements by those individuals. Benjamin Rush was the Surgeon General for the Revolutionary Army during the Revolutionary War. He is also the father of the American Bible Society, a great teacher of constitutional truths, and also a great teacher about God and the principles of God that back the Constitution. And he said, the Constitution is the work of a divine providence. And then we have John Adams, who also said, the general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. I could give you many more statements, but we'll just give it those few. So with this information behind me, and having studied the Constitution as a Christian document, Bob and I then, as we traveled the country, I began teaching these concepts of the spiritual nature and the Christian principles that infiltrate and that are the foundations of the Constitution. I taught about the Declaration of Independence, and you are all familiar with this, but let me just refresh your memory on what the Declaration of Independence says about God, because it firmly establishes that God is the source of its authority in acting. So the Declaration refers to our laws of nature and of nature's God, and it refers to us all being equally endowed by our Creator. It also then refers to the superior judge of the world and our reliance on that divine providence. So you can see how the Declaration establishes the principles of God as its foundation. And so then I began also teaching about the Constitution itself. And of course, we have the First Amendment, where we know that there is a statement that the government is not to interfere in any way with religion. And we also have in Article 6, the very last words in Article 6 of the Constitution, state that there will be no religious test ever used in the United States for any office. So you have religion being mentioned there in those two places. But there are other places in the Constitution where we find spiritual principles. The word ordain is used twice in the Constitution. It's used once in the preamble, and it's used once in Article 3, where we're talking about the court system, where it interestingly refers to the court system being ordained. What does the word ordain mean? For the answer to that, I went to the Webster's 1828 dictionary, which is the closest source we have of information to what the Founding Fathers would have used. And this is what the word ordain meant in 1828, therefore probably the sense that the Founding Fathers were using it in. And it refers to something of priestly origin, something of religious priestly origin. So the Founding Fathers brought that into the Constitution as well. But there's a fifth place where we can find Christian principles in the Constitution. And that place is in the 10-day veto power given to the President over laws that have been passed, that have been approved by the Senate and by the House. As every piece of legislation is sent to the President, he has 10 days to approve that piece of legislation exempting the Sabbath, entrenching religious principles, our respect for the Sabbath day. So Bob and I traveled the country teaching about that and enjoyed it very much, but I had a very interesting experience happen to me about a year and a half ago. I was sitting on my favorite chair in my office, just been reading my scriptures, and I've been reading the Constitution. I read those two together, they go together to me. And it dawned on me that if the Constitution is based on Christian principles, I should be able to go into that Constitution, and I should be able to find Christian principles throughout. And so I decided to create a list of Christian principles and to go into the Constitution and see what I could find in the Constitution on those specific Christian principles. It didn't take me very long at all to develop that list. That list is on the back of your handout. Sharon put that information in the back of that handout for you. And I'll be talking to you more about it today, and so you'll be able to take that list home with you. I'm going to challenge you, each one of you, to read the Constitution of the United States and look for these 8 sets of twin principles in the Constitution. So I created my list, and I got out one of those black and white composition notebooks, because I'm still old school and I still do things with pen and paper. And I went through the entire Constitution, and I listed every time I found one of those sets of 8 principles in the Constitution. And this, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, is what I found. There is not one phrase in the Constitution of the United States that is not based on a solid Christian principle. As I read the Constitution, and I took a long time to do it, over and over again, I found chills sweeping over my body, and I found a reaffirmation of the fact that our government is solidly and immovably entrenched in the principles of God, not the principles of man.